We're back. I'm Jay Weidner. We're talking to John Major Jenkins about 2012 and the end of one world, possibly, and the beginning of another world. So, John, you were saying that the Mayans said that we would fall into a kind of ego world. Why don't you continue with that? That was really interesting.
Yeah, this gets into the spiritual teachings inside the creation myth, but I think it's important to clarify a few things up front because there's a lot of misconceptions in the 2012 discussion. For example, I've been involved in this for 20 years, and I've only seen it get worse and worse and worse despite trying to be a voice of clarity on this idea that the Maya predicted the end of the world in 2012. That's pretty much the lead-off for anything that happens in 2012, documentaries, films, novels, books, you name it. And the fact is that there's absolutely zero evidence that the Maya thought of 2012 as the end of the world. The calendar does not end in 2012. It's a cyclic time philosophy. So the calendar continues. And so we have to be really careful with how we talk about this because it all too often feeds into the doomsday prophets that are exploiting this in the marketplace and misrepresenting the Maya tradition on this. We have to be very careful to not allow the doomsday fear mongering to be projected onto this 2012 date because that's not at all what the 2012 date is about if one looks at the actual facts around what we know from the Maya tradition that they thought about 2012. So that's kind of like the caveat that I like to launch off with. So in terms of the spiritual teachings, yes, there are spiritual teachings inside of the Popol Vuh, or the hero twin creation myth, that relate to how the Maya thought about cycle endings. And for them, they have a deity named Seven Macaw. He's the vain and false ruler that appears at the end of the cycle. And he squawks loudly, and he's hell-bent on deceiving humanity, controlling humanity with his glittery ornaments. He tries to keep consciousness stuck to the surface of reality and keep people from knowing their true natures, to having an initiatory experience of connection with their true eternal soul. And so obviously we can understand this as being sort of an expression of the Maya insight as to what happens at the end of the cycle, which can be understood as the rise of megalomaniacal egoism. And in my book, The 2012 Story, it's really in two parts. The first part goes into the nuts and bolts reconstruction of the ancient lost 2012 cosmology, and looking at what scholars say about it and my own independent pioneering work on that, as well as new discoveries that are happening that actually vindicate the work that I put on the table 15 years ago. But the second part launches into the metaphysics of spiritual transformation that is evident in the Maya creation myth. And we find that there is this dynamic between Seven Macaw, the false ruler that appears at the end of the cycle, and what is going on in the world today. We see megalomaniacal rulers, trying to control and deceive humanity for their own selfish purposes. We also see it in non-human entities, such as the institution of the corporation. The corporation, of course, is the institution and the entity that is basically controlling the world, from the banking institutions to transnational corporations. And oddly enough, they've been granted the status of personhood. They can live forever, and they have no responsibility for the actions that they take. So I think what we have going on in the world today is actually the fulfillment of the Maya prophecy for 2012, but it must be understood on this archetypal level of symbolism. And that's how the Maya thought about these things. It sort of requires a modern person must sort of get beyond their own sort of literal way of thinking about things in order to understand this deeper level that's going on inside of Maya traditions. So I lay all this out in a way that connects it meaningfully into what's going on in the world today in my new book. And so that's kind of what's going on.
Yeah, I completely, agree with that. I wonder why they keep pushing this fear angle. I have been interviewed now 3 times or 4 times, I can't even remember anymore, by the History Channel, and I don't watch TV, but I had to watch this latest show that they put on, which heaven forbid I think is on again tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Called the Nostradamus Effect, and in 1 hour I counted like 19 nuclear bombs went off. One time I think 7 in a row went off. And I think they used up every single shot of a nuclear weapon ever taken by any military ever. And for the life of me, I cannot understand what the people they were interviewing weren't saying anything doomsday except for the one guy, Joseph, I forget his name now. Lawrence Joseph, who I don't even know if he even knows what he's talking about. And so he gets on every show and talks about how there's going to be all these doomsday things happening in Patrick Jarrell, and I don't know where they're getting their facts from. That's not what's happening. What's happening is on a primordial level. We're actually the weight of time is changing. The density of time is shifting, and we don't know what's going to happen. But I can guarantee it, we were never in control before, so we don't have to worry about losing control. And this is really my primary concern, and actually why I'm doing this radio show, because there is this everyone is frozen in fear right now. Sure. And instead, we should be really thinking about what kind of world we want to make.
Right.
Because this one for sure is going. It's going, if it's not really gone. And to be honest with you, there was nothing there anyway. It was just a virtual world.
Yeah, well, the media, I think, is playing the role of Stephen McCaw to keep people stuck in fear so they can't move forward. There's a force of limitation that wants to keep people stuck to their surface ego identities and not engage the larger picture, not open up to the larger picture that can see how everything's interconnected, and then we can move forward and empower ourselves individually and collectively to create a more sustainable world.
That's exactly right. They are more or less forcing us to live in their nightmare. And it's really time for us to actually just forget them and live in a world that we create that may be parallel to theirs, but has very little to do with whatever it is that they're doing.
Well, I don't think people are buying it anymore.
I don't either. We're going to be back, and we're going to talk about that, in fact.
All right.
I'm Jay Weidner, Smoke and Mirrors. We'll be right back.